The hospital called me at 5:47 a.m. and said, "Your twin brother is alive." But this was the second time he had lost hope. I froze. The first time it happened, nobody called me. His son and his wife hid everything from me while my brother suffered alone inside his own home. When I discovered the truth, I walked through their front door wearing his face, his clothes, and his identity. They looked at me with the same cruelty they had shown him for years. They thought they had broken a helpless old man, but they had no idea who had just entered their house. Thank you for being here genuinely. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below, and let's see how far Revenge Dad has traveled. Every comment reminds me why these stories are worth telling. Some elements of this story are fictional, shaped for entertainment and education. Names and settings are coincidental. The truth inside them is not. The phone rang at 5:47 in the morning, and I knew before I answered it that something had broken. I had been sitting at my kitchen table in Greenwich for the past 20 minutes, watching the sky outside the window go from black to the particular shade of dark blue that comes just before dawn. 30 years working federal financial crimes had rewired something permanent in me. I had not slept past 6 in the morning since the Clinton administration, and my body treated silence the way other men treated caffeine. I was on my second cup of coffee untouched when the screen lit up with an area code I recognized immediately. 626. Pasadena, California. I picked up on the first ring. Mr. Cole, Mr. Nathan Cole, speaking. This is Patricia Morgan, charge nurse at Huntington Memorial Hospital. I'm calling regarding a patient in Ethan Cole. You're listed as his emergency contact. My hand tightened around the mug. What happened to my brother? Patricia Morgan had the voice of someone who had delivered bad news so many times, it had become architecture solid load-bearing, built to hold weight without collapsing. Mr. Cole, your brother was brought in by ambulance approximately 2 hours ago. He sustained a fall in his home. We're looking at 2 fractured ribs, significant dehydration, and some additional findings the attending physician will want to discuss with you directly. Is he conscious? He regained consciousness about 40 minutes ago. A pause deliberate waited. Mr. Cole, before he lost consciousness in the ER, he was repeating something, the same phrase several times over. My chest went tight. What did he say? He said, "Don't call my son. He'll be angry." I sat with those 7 words for 3 full seconds. In 30 years of investigations, I had learned that the most important information was rarely the loudest. It was the thing someone said when they thought no one was listening, or when the pain got too big to manage the story anymore. 7 words from a hospital gurney. 7 words that landed in my chest like a stone dropping through still water. "I'll be on the next flight," I said, and I was already standing. The flight from JFK to LAX was 5 hours and 50 minutes. I spent most of it staring at the tray table and running inventory on everything I had missed. Ethan and I were identical twins, same face, same crooked nose from a baseball accident when we were 14. Same jaw that our mother always said looked like our grandfather's. People who met us together mixed up our names constantly. People who met us separately sometimes didn't realize there were 2 of us at all. But we had never been the same person. I had spent my career learning that human beings lied, that money revealed character more honestly than almost anything else, and that the people most certain of their own righteousness were frequently the ones worth watching most closely. Ethan had spent his career teaching 17-year-olds about the Civil War and the New Deal, and why history mattered, and he had believed every word of it until the last day. He had one son, Marcus. 38 years old, ran a private real estate investment firm in Los Angeles. Ethan had sold his first house to help Marcus start that company, had co-signed loans, had stood in the gap every single time Marcus needed something, without ever once asking for an accounting. I had told Ethan 4 years ago, over Thanksgiving dinner, that he was giving too much. Ethan had laughed and said, "He's my son Nathan. That's not giving too much. That's just being a father." I had not pushed it. I should have pushed it. The plane touched down at LAX at 11:20, and I had a rental car on the freeway by noon, heading northeast toward Pasadena, with the San Gabriel Mountains rising ahead of me through the haze. Huntington Memorial was a broad, pale building set back from the street behind a row of mature sycamores. I found parking, found the elevator, found the corridor the charge nurse directed me to, and then I stopped outside room 214 and put my hand flat against the door for a moment before I pushed it open. Ethan was awake. He was propped against two pillows, a monitor clipped to his finger, an IV line running into the back of his left hand. He was thinner than I had seen him in years, not dramatically, not in a way that would have alarmed a stranger, but I was not a stranger. I knew that face the way I knew my own reflection, and the man in that bed had lost something that went beyond weight. The skin around his eyes was loose with exhaustion. His shoulders curved inward like a man bracing against weather that had been going on too long. When he saw me in the doorway, his face crumpled. His chin went unsteady and his eyes filled so fast that the tears were already sliding down his cheeks before he could pull in a breath. "Nathan." His voice broke on the single word. "You didn't have to. I told them not to." "Hey." I crossed the room in 4 steps and pulled a chair up so close that our knees almost touched. I leaned forward and gripped his forearm carefully because of the IV, but firmly enough that he could feel it. "I'm here. I'm right here." He pressed his free hand over his eyes, and his shoulders shook, not dramatically, but with the deep, exhausted trembling of a man who had been holding something enormous for a very long time, and had finally run out of the strength to keep holding it. His breath came in ragged pulls. I kept my hand on his arm and let him go because some grief needs room before it needs anything else. After a long moment, he lowered his hand. His eyes were red and swollen, his face blotchy with the effort of it. He looked, I thought, like a man who had not cried in so long that his body had forgotten how to do it gracefully. "I fell in the garage," he said. His voice was still unsteady, the words coming out in careful pieces. "It was stupid. I was reaching for a box and my back it gave out. It's been giving me trouble." "How long?" "A while." He looked down at the blanket over his lap. His fingers plucked at a loose thread. "I'm fine, Nathan. I didn't want you flying across the country for Ethan." I waited until he looked up at me. "You told the paramedics not to call Marcus. You said he would be angry." His jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle jump beneath his skin. His hand went still on the blanket. The tears that had dried on his face caught the light from the window, and he turned his head away from me, toward the glass, toward the slice of pale California sky visible above the parking structure. "I don't remember saying that," he said. "Yes, you do." A long beat. His throat moved as he swallowed. Outside in the corridor, someone pushed a cart past the door, and the wheels squeaked against the linoleum, and then it was quiet again. "He's been under a lot of pressure," Ethan said. His voice had dropped to something quieter, more careful. "The company has been difficult lately. He gets frustrated. It doesn't mean it's not." He stopped, pressed his lips together, started again. "He's my son, Nathan." Before I could answer, Dr. Abramowitz came in, tall, unhurried, with the direct manner of a man who considered clarity a form of kindness. He walked me through the imaging on a light board mounted to the wall, 2 fractured ribs left side, dehydration consistent with inadequate fluid intake over multiple days, vitamin deficiencies indicating poor nutrition over an extended period, and then he pointed to the imaging of Ethan's forearms and said in the same level tone he'd used throughout, "The bruising pattern here is inconsistent with a single fall event. It suggests either repeated recent incidents or sustained physical contact with hard surfaces over time. We're required under California law to flag this for our patient advocate." Ethan stared at the ceiling while the doctor spoke. His hands lay flat on the blanket, very still, and I watched his chest rise and fall with the slow, deliberate breathing of a man working hard to keep his face composed. After Dr. Abramowitz left, I reached down and picked up the bag sitting beside Ethan's bed, the single worn overnight bag, the only thing he had apparently been allowed to bring. I set it on the chair beside me. In the outer pocket, partially visible, was a small notebook. The cover was soft, with handling the corners, bent the spine cracked from repeated opening. The kind of notebook a person reaches for in the night when the thoughts get too loud to keep inside their own head. I picked it up. Ethan's eyes cut to it immediately, and something moved across his face. Not anger, not exactly. Something rawer than that. Something that looked like the expression of a man who had just watched his last private thing be found. "Nathan!" His voice cracked again, and he pressed his fist against his mouth, his knuckles white, his eyes flooding. "I've got you," I said. "Whatever's in here, I've got you." The notebook was 63 pages long. I know because I counted them sitting in that hospital chair with the afternoon light shifting across the floor, and Ethan watching me from the bed with his hands pressed flat against his thighs like a man bracing for a verdict he already knew was coming. The handwriting changed across the pages. The early entries were careful, controlled the penmanship of a retired schoolteacher who had spent decades writing on chalkboards for students in the back row. By the middle section, the letters had begun to loosen and drift. By the final pages, some of the words were barely legible, pressed so hard into the paper that the pen had torn through in places. I read every word. Day 8. Marcus said I shouldn't manage my own accounts anymore. He said I make mistakes. I don't think I make mistakes. But he took the bank card anyway. Day 15. Olivia told me I was a burden at dinner tonight. She said it quietly like a reminder, like I was supposed to already know. Day 22. They've decided I shouldn't drive. Marcus took the car keys. He said it's for my safety. I asked if I could call a cab when I needed to go somewhere. He said there was no need because someone would always take me. No one has taken me anywhere in 11 days. Day 30. I wanted to call Nathan today. Marcus was home all morning. I waited until the afternoon and tried to use the house phone, but the line had been disconnected. I didn't know when that happened. Day 44. My back gave out in the garage. I was moving boxes. Olivia had asked me to reorganize the storage wall before Marcus's clients came to see the property next door. I dropped a box and went down with it. I was on the floor for a while before I could get up. Marcus came out eventually and looked at the broken box and said I was being dramatic. I stopped at day 44. My jaw was clenched so tight that I could feel the pressure in my back teeth. I looked up at Ethan. He was crying again, silently this time, tears running straight down his face, his chin trembling, both hands pressed over his mouth like he was trying to hold something in that was too big to contain. Ethan? My voice came out rougher than I intended. How long? He shook his head. How long has it been like this? Nathan, His voice broke completely. He pulled in a shaking breath and tried again. He's under so much pressure. The company has been struggling. He doesn't mean... Stop, I leaned forward. Stop explaining him to me. I need you to talk to me. How long? His face crumpled. The tears came harder, and his shoulders shook, and he pressed his hands over his eyes and just fell apart, the way people fall apart when they've been holding it together, past the point where holding it together was possible. His breath came in rough, uneven pulls, the sound of a man who had been swallowing grief for so long it had nowhere left to go. I sat forward and put both hands on his forearms gently because of the IV and the ribs and held on. I've got you, I said. Right here, I've got you. It took a long time. When he finally lowered his hands, his face was wrecked, eyes swollen, cheeks wet, the exhaustion underneath all of it, so profound it was almost physical to look at. 14 months, he said. Maybe longer. It was gradual. I didn't notice how much had changed until he stopped, swallowed. Until I tried to write it down and ran out of pages. I looked down at the notebook in my hands. Day 51 was the last entry. Day 51, I think I deserve this. I gave Marcus everything I had, and somewhere along the way, I gave him too much. Maybe this is what that looks like at the end. Something moved through my chest that I did not have a clean word for. Not anger, anger was too simple. Something older and colder than anger, the thing that lives underneath it when the person being hurt is someone you would take a bullet for without thinking twice. You don't deserve this, I said. Nathan, you don't, not one day of it. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes still bright with tears. Then he said, very quietly, "What are you going to do?" I had been asking myself the same question since 30,000 feet above Kansas. In 30 years of federal investigations, I had walked into situations far more dangerous than a family dispute. I had built cases against men with lawyers on retainer and offshore accounts and connections that reached into places that made my director nervous. I knew how evidence worked. I knew how people cracked. I knew exactly what it took to dismantle a lie that had been built with care. What I had never done was walk into a case where the person being protected was my brother and the person doing the damage was his son. I'm going to go in, I said. Ethan frowned. Go in where? Your house. I held his gaze. As you. The frown deepened. Nathan, we're identical. We've been mistaken for each other our entire lives. Marcus hasn't spent significant time with you in months. You said so yourself. He's barely home. Olivia sees what she expects to see. I set the notebook down on the bedside tray. I go in as Ethan. I stay long enough to find out exactly what's been done and collect what I need. Then it ends. Ethan stared at me. His hands were shaking. I could see the tremor in his fingers, the way his knuckles had gone white where he gripped the blanket. And if Marcus realizes, he won't. You don't know that. I know him less well than you do, and I'm still more suspicious of him than you've ever been. That's an advantage, not a liability. Ethan looked away toward the window. His jaw worked. Outside, a cloud had moved across the sun, and the room had gone a shade dimmer, and I watched my brother's face while he turned the idea over, watched the fear move through him, and the grief, and underneath both of those, something else. Something small and stubborn that I recognized because I had seen it in him our whole lives. The part of Ethan that had never quite stopped fighting, even when everything else had gone quiet. "There's something else," I said. "I found a document in your hospital intake paperwork, something that had been filed with the court. A petition." I kept my voice level. "Marcus applied for conservatorship, Ethan. He's been trying to have you declared legally incapacitated. There's a hearing scheduled." The color drained from Ethan's face so completely that I reached for the call button on instinct. His mouth opened, closed. His hands gripped the blanket so hard the fabric bunched between his fingers. "He can't." His voice had gone to almost nothing. "He wouldn't." "It's filed. I saw it." A sound came out of Ethan that I had no name for, something between a gasp and a sob, low, and broken, the sound of a man feeling the floor drop out from under him. His whole body seemed to contract, shoulders pulling inward, head dropping forward, and he pressed his fist against his sternum, like something there was physically hurting him. I moved to the edge of the bed and put my arm around him carefully, the ribs, and held on. "Listen to me," I said. "It doesn't go through, I won't let it go through. But I need you to trust me, and I need you to do exactly one thing." He pulled his head up. His face was devastated. "What?" "Sign a power of attorney, today before you leave this hospital. It gives me legal authority to act on your behalf. It means everything I do inside that house is legitimate, documented, and defensible. It protects you, and it protects me." Ethan looked at me for a long moment, his eyes swimming. Then he said, "And then what? I just wait. You go to my house in Greenwich, you rest, you let me work. Nathan, he's my son." His voice cracked on the last word, and fresh tears spilled over, and he didn't bother wiping them. "He's still my son." "I know." I held his gaze. "That's why I'm going instead of the FBI." The barber on Lake Avenue did not ask questions. I had found the place at 7:15 in the morning, 20 minutes after it opened, and I sat in the chair and showed the man a photograph of Ethan on my phone, a picture from 2 Christmases ago, before everything. When Ethan still wore his hair slightly longer on the sides and parted it the way our father had parted his, and I said, "Make me look like this." The barber studied the photo, studied my face, and got to work without a word. 22 minutes later, I looked in the mirror and felt something shift in my chest that I was not prepared for. I had seen my brother's face in mirrors my entire life, but I had never seen it looking back at me with the specific intention of becoming him. I paid in cash, tipped generously, and drove back to the hotel. I had called Detective Carol Waters the night before from the hospital parking structure, while Ethan's cab was still visible, pulling out of the driveway. Waters ran the Elder Financial Abuse Unit at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, a 15-year veteran who had built her career on exactly the kind of case I was about to walk into. I had gotten her name from a former colleague at the Bureau who told me without elaboration that she was the best in the county and did not suffer fools. She had picked up on the second ring. "Detective Waters. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm a retired federal financial crimes investigator. I need 20 minutes of your time, and I think you're going to want to hear what I have to say." A pause. "Mr. Cole, it's 9:40 at night." "I know, I'm sorry. My brother is in the hospital with 2 fractured ribs and evidence of sustained physical mistreatment, and his son has a conservatorship petition pending with the court that my brother didn't know existed until 3 hours ago. I have a 63-page notebook documenting 14 months of financial control and isolation. I have a power of attorney signed today giving me legal authority to act on my brother's behalf. And I have a plan that I need a law enforcement partner to make work." Another pause, longer this time. "Tell me the plan," she said. I told her. When I finished, the silence on her end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Then, you want to impersonate your twin brother and live inside the house. Under his legal power of attorney, yes. That is either the most professional thing I've ever heard or the most insane. In my experience, those two categories overlap more than people expect. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. I'll need to see the power of attorney documentation and the notebook, and you need to understand that anything you collect inside that house has to be done by the book, or it's useless to me. I spent 30 years building cases for federal prosecutors. I know what usable evidence looks like. All right, Mr. Cole. Her voice had shifted, the skepticism still there, but underneath it now, something sharper. Interest. Let's talk about how we do this correctly. I also called James Okafor that night, an elder law attorney in Pasadena, whose name Nurse Morgan had given me quietly at the end of her shift, with the particular discretion of someone who had seen this situation before and knew which resources mattered. Okafor had answered his emergency line with the alert, unhurried manner of a man accustomed to calls that could not wait until morning. I explained the conservatorship petition. He asked 3 precise questions. Then he said, "I'll file a counterpetition first thing tomorrow and request an emergency stay of the hearing. The court will need your brother's documentation and a statement from his physician. Can you get me Dr. Abramowitz by 9 a.m.? Yes, I said before I had confirmed it. Some things you commit to and figure out afterward. Okafor delivered. By 10 the following morning, the conservatorship hearing had been delayed pending review. Marcus did not yet know that anyone had pushed back. Back at the hotel, I laid Ethan's clothes out on the bed. He had sent 2 bags with me packed the previous evening by a nurse who had helped him while I handled the paperwork filled with the things Ethan apparently still owned that Marcus and Olivia had not yet found a reason to take. Soft flannel shirts in muted colors, khaki trousers, a cardigan the color of old moss that I recognized from a photograph going back 15 years, a pair of brown leather shoes worn at the heel, resoled at least twice. I changed out of my own clothes and put on Ethan's. Then I picked up the watch. It was a Seiko nothing expensive, a modest dress watch with a cream face and a brown leather band that had cracked and been repaired with a neat row of stitches near the clasp. Ethan had worn it every day since our mother gave it to him on his 40th birthday. I had been there when she handed it to him. I remembered the way his face had gone soft and bright all at once, the way he had put it on immediately and held his wrist up to show her how it looked. I fastened it around my own wrist. The leather was shaped to Ethan's wrist, not mine, slightly looser on one side, worn smooth in a particular way. I turned my arm over and looked at it for a moment. At the bottom of the second bag, wrapped in a handkerchief, was a ring, the one our father had given us both on the day we turned 21. Identical in every detail. Ethan had packed it without explanation. I put it on. It fit the way things fit when they were always meant to be yours. Then I picked up my keys and drove to Pasadena. The house was a craftsman bungalow on a tree-lined street in the older part of the neighborhood, the kind of street where the houses had been built in the 1920s and had been loved and repaired by a succession of families ever since. Ethan had bought it 22 years ago on a teacher's salary and a small inheritance, and he had spent the first decade of ownership fixing everything himself. The porch, the gutters, the kitchen cabinets, the garden along the south fence that he had planted from seed. I sat in the rental car across the street for 3 minutes, watching the front window. A light was on in the kitchen. Through the glass I could see movement. Olivia moving back and forth with the efficient purpose of someone managing a household on a schedule that left no room for deviation. My phone buzzed. Waters' paperwork confirmed received. Eyes on when you're inside. Do not collect audio without prior authorization. I'm working on the order. Text me when you're in. I typed back, going in now. I got out of the car. The front walk was brick original to the house, uneven in places where tree roots had lifted the edges over the decades. I knew this because Ethan had complained about it cheerfully for years and never fixed it, because he said the unevenness gave the path character. My feet found the uneven places automatically, muscle memory, borrowed from years of visiting, and I climbed the porch steps and knocked. The door opened 14 seconds later. Olivia Reyes Cole was 35 years old, dark-haired, with the composed and carefully assembled appearance of a woman who considered presentation a form of control. She looked at me with an expression that was warm on the surface and measuring underneath the expression of someone taking inventory while smiling. "Dad," she stepped back to let me in. "You look better than I expected." My stomach turned at the word, "Dad," said with the ease of long practice, like a door that swings open without resistance because it has been opened so many times. "Do I said. "Marcus will be pleased. He was worried about you." She closed the door behind me, and I heard the soft automatic click of the deadbolt engaging. He won't be home until Friday, but we have a lot to get through before then. I looked around the entryway, the house I had visited dozens of times over 22 years, now rearranged in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. The side table where Ethan had always kept his keys and a small ceramic bowl full of odds and ends had been replaced by a sleek console with nothing on it. The framed photographs that had lined the hallway wall, Ethan's whole life in pictures, were gone. The walls were bare. "What happened to the photographs?" I asked. Olivia's smile stayed exactly where it was. "We redecorated. Fresh start." She gestured toward the hallway. "Your room is ready. I'll bring dinner at 6. She said your room the way a hotel concierge might say it, professionally, without warmth, like a service being rendered to someone who was not quite a person. I walked down the hall. The door to Ethan's bedroom, his bedroom in his house, had a new handle. A lever-style handle with a push-button lock on the outside. A lock on the outside. I went in, sat on the edge of the bed, and pressed my hands against my knees to keep them from shaking with the particular fury that had no clean outlet. Then I took out my phone and texted Waters 2 words I'm in. The knock came at 4:53 in the morning. Not a gentle knock. A flat, business-like rap on the bedroom door, 3 beats evenly, spaced, the kind of knock that does not expect to wait long for an answer. I had been awake for 40 minutes, already lying on top of the covers in Ethan's clothes, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house breathe around me. I got up and opened the door. Olivia was already dressed, pressed slacks, a silk blouse, hair pulled back with a kind of precision that takes time and does not happen by accident. She was holding a cup of coffee, not offering it to me, holding it for herself. "The garden needs watering before it gets hot," she said. "The hose is on the left side of the garage. After that, the storage boxes on the back wall need to be moved to the right side. Marcus wants the left wall clear for when the contractors come next week." She glanced at her watch. "Breakfast is at 7. Don't be late." She walked back down the hallway without waiting for a response. I stood in the doorway of my brother's bedroom at 4:53 in the morning and understood with a clarity that felt like cold water exactly what 14 months of this had done to Ethan. Not the big things, not the stolen bank cards, or the disconnected phone, or the locked door. The small things. The ones that arrive before sunrise and do not ask permission and accumulate day after day into something that grinds a person down, to a size that fits inside someone else's idea of who they should be. I found the hose on the left side of the garage. The garden ran along the south fence, Ethan's garden, the one he had planted from seed 20 years ago. In the early morning light, I could see it was struggling. The beds were overgrown in places, neglected in others, the soil dry and cracked at the edges in a way that told me the watering had been irregular for months. A rosebush near the gate had gone woody and wild, unpruned, reaching in directions that Ethan never would have allowed. My throat tightened. I turned on the hose and started at the far end. After the garden, the boxes. The storage wall in the garage held 43 cardboard boxes of varying sizes. I counted them because counting things was the habit I reached for when I needed to keep my hands busy and my face composed. Some of the boxes were labeled in Ethan's handwriting: books, tax records, Margaret's china. Margaret was Ethan's wife, dead 11 years. The china had been her mother's. I moved 31 boxes from the left wall to the right. By the time I finished, my lower back was sending sharp complaints up my spine with every lift, and I had a new and visceral understanding of exactly what day 44 in Ethan's notebook had felt like. I went inside and washed my hands at the kitchen sink. Olivia was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a plate of eggs in front of her. On the counter beside the refrigerator, there was a second plate, 2 pieces of toast dry, and a glass of water. No eggs, no coffee. "Yours is on the counter," she said, without looking up from her screen. I picked up the plate. The toast was cold. I stood at the counter and ate it, standing up looking at the back of Olivia's head, and I kept my face completely empty because the alternative was something I could not afford this early in the process. "Marcus called this morning," Olivia said, still looking at her laptop. "He'll be home Friday evening. He wants to go over some paperwork with you this weekend." She clicked something on her screen. "Nothing complicated, just routine." "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. She looked up then, just briefly, just long enough to assess. "Asset transfers, trust documentation, things that have been sitting too long." Her eyes went back to the screen. "You'll want to be rested. It's a lot to take in at once." I ate the last piece of cold toast and set the plate in the sink. I'd like to look over whatever he's bringing before I sign anything. The typing stopped. Olivia looked up from her laptop with an expression that was still pleasant, still composed, but had developed a new quality underneath the quality of a person who has encountered unexpected resistance from a source they had classified as reliable. Her head tilted a fraction of an inch. "Of course," she said. "That's completely reasonable." The warmth in her voice was so well constructed that a stranger would have missed the slight flattening underneath it. "Marcus just wants to make sure everything is taken care of, for your security." "My security," I repeated. "You're not getting any younger, Dad." She said it gently. The word dad landed like something dropped from a height. "None of us are. It's just responsible planning." She went back to her laptop. I went to the window above the sink and looked out at the garden, at Ethan's rosebush, growing wild against the fence, reaching for something that hadn't been tended in too long. My eyes burned, not from tiredness, from something that had been building since 4:53 in the morning and had no clean place to go. I pressed my fingertips hard against the edge of the counter until the feeling passed. That evening I sat on the edge of the bed in Ethan's locked room and took stock. First day. Here's what I had confirmed with my own body. The work started before 5 in the morning and was assigned without discussion. The food was portioned and placed separately, a daily reminder of a hierarchy that did not need to be stated, because it was built into every small decision. The paperwork Marcus was bringing on Friday was not routine. No routine document required a person to be rested before reviewing it. I took out the secondary phone, the one Olivia did not know about, kept inside the lining of Ethan's old cardigan, and texted Waters. Day 1. Physical labor starting before 5 a.m. Separate meals, inferior portion. Lock on bedroom door, confirmed operational. Paperwork incoming, Friday asset transfers. Need that audio order before the weekend. Her reply came in under 2 minutes. Working on it. Judge owes me a favor. How are you holding up? I looked around the room, at the bare walls where Ethan's photographs had been, at the window that locked from the outside, at the single overhead light with no bedside lamp, no reading light, nothing that would allow a person to do anything in this room after dark except sleep. I typed back, I keep thinking about what it took for him to still be defending Marcus in that notebook. After all of this. Waters. That's the hardest part of these cases. The love doesn't stop. It just gets used against them. I set the phone down on the bed and pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes until I saw color. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with moving 31 boxes. Outside the locked door, I heard Olivia's footsteps in the hallway, measured unhurried, moving toward the front of the house. Then the sound of the television coming on in the living room. Then nothing. I picked up the phone again and called Ethan. He answered on the first ring. Nathan. Hey. My voice came out steadier than I felt. How's Greenwich? Quiet. A pause. How's my house? I looked at the bare walls. It's still standing. That's not what I asked. I know. I pressed my hand flat against the Ethan's mattress in Ethan's room, with a lock on the outside of the door. It's going to be okay, Ethan. I need you to believe that. A long beat on his end. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. My rosebush. Did you see it? I watered it this morning. The sound that came through the phone then was small and broken. Not quite a sob, not quite a laugh. Somewhere in the territory between relief and grief that does not have a clean name. He never watered it, Ethan said. Not once in 14 months. I know. Nathan, his voice dropped. Be careful, please. Always, I said. Get some sleep. I ended the call and sat in the dark of my brother's room, in my brother's clothes, on my brother's bed, listening to the house that used to be his settle around me in the California night. Friday was 4 days away. I had work to do. On the third morning, Olivia left the house at 8:47. I knew her schedule by then, had been mapping it since the first day the way I used to map the routines of subjects during surveillance operations. She left every Tuesday and Thursday morning for what she called her commitments, which she did not elaborate on and I did not ask about. She was gone for between 90 minutes and 2 hours. She took her laptop with her. She did not take the key to the filing cabinet in the small office off the hallway. I gave her 4 minutes after the sound of her car faded from the street. Then I got up from the kitchen table, walked to the office, and went to work. The filing cabinet was a 2-drawer steel unit pushed against the wall behind the desk. the kind of generic office furniture that comes in boxes and takes 45 minutes to assemble and lasts forever. The bottom drawer was unlocked and held what appeared to be household records, utility bills, insurance documents, a folder of receipts going back 3 years. I photographed everything systematically starting at the back. The top drawer was locked. I had the lock open in under 3 minutes using a technique I had learned from a forensic specialist in my second year at the Bureau, who had the philosophy that a good investigator should be able to access anything a criminal could access. The lock was a standard pin tumbler, nothing sophisticated, the kind of lock that communicates the appearance of security rather than the reality of it. Inside the top drawer were 4 manila folders neatly labeled in Olivia's handwriting. The first folder held what appeared to be legitimate estate planning documents, will beneficiary designations, insurance policies. I photographed each page without reading them thoroughly. I would read them later carefully with Okafor on the phone. The second folder made my hands go absolutely still. It was a property transfer agreement, a legal instrument for conveying the title of a residential property from one party to another. The property described was this house, Ethan's house. 22 years of mortgage payments and repairs, and a garden planted from seed, and a rose bush that no one had watered in 14 months. The transferring party was listed as Ethan James Cole. The receiving party was Marcus David Cole. The date of execution, the date on which Ethan's signature appeared at the bottom of the document next to a notary seal, was the 14th of January, a Tuesday. I pulled out my phone and opened the photograph I had taken of Ethan's hospital admission record. Dr. Abramowitz had given me a copy before I left standard procedure when a family member requests records which I had done methodically before leaving Pasadena the first time. January 14th. Ethan had been admitted to Huntington Memorial on January 12th. He had been unconscious and sedated through January 15th. He had been physically incapable of signing anything on January 14th. The signature on the transfer agreement was a reasonable facsimile of Ethan's handwriting, close enough to pass a casual inspection, not close enough to survive a forensic comparison. I had seen forged signatures for 30 years. This one had the particular quality of someone who had practiced, but not enough. The pen pressure was inconsistent. The letter connection slightly wrong, in the way that happens when a person is copying, rather than writing from muscle memory. The notary seal beside the signature belonged to a notary public named Robert Fisk. I photographed the seal registration number and texted it to Waters along with the photographs of the document. Her reply came back in 11 minutes. Robert Fisk surrendered his notary commission in October 2023, 14 months before this document was executed. That seal is fraudulent. Nathan, this is forgery and notary fraud. 2 separate felonies under California Penal Code 470 and Business and Professions Code 8214. I'm adding this to the file. I sat back in the desk chair and pressed my fingers hard against the bridge of my nose, breathing carefully through the anger that was trying to find its way out through my hands. They had forged his signature while he was unconscious in a hospital bed. They had used a fraudulent notary seal to make it look legitimate. They had been planning to transfer his house, the house he had lived in for 22 years, the house that held every photograph of his wife and his son and his life before any of this, without him ever knowing it had happened until it was already done. I put the folder back exactly as I had found it. The third folder held financial statements, 2 parallel sets of records for Marcus's company, which I recognized immediately as the structure of a fraudulent reporting scheme. The legitimate records and the version prepared for outside presentation were different in ways that added up to approximately $3 million over 18 months. I photographed every page and sent them to Waters with a note, "Get these to someone at DFPI. This isn't just elder abuse anymore." The fourth folder, I almost missed it, was thinner than the others and had slipped toward the back of the drawer. Inside was a printed email chain, the paper slightly creased as though it had been folded and unfolded several times. The emails were between Olivia and Marcus, dated across a period of 8 months. I read them standing at the filing cabinet, and as I read, a chill moved through me that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. Olivia had written in an email dated 7 months ago, "The timeline needs to move up. Once the conservatorship is approved, everything transfers automatically. The accountant is the only problem left. Handle it," Marcus had replied. "Raymond says he won't sign the Q3 report. I'll deal with it, Olivia. Don't deal with it. Terminate him. Today." And make sure the severance agreement has an NDA. We can't have him talking. I photographed the emails and placed the folder back with the same care I had used for everything else. Every item exactly where it had been. Every drawer closed to the same position. I was back at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I had made myself black from the pot Olivia had left, when I heard her car in the driveway at 10:23. She came in through the back door, set her laptop bag on the counter, and looked at me, sitting at the kitchen table. Her eyes moved across the room in a quick automatic sweep. The kind of check a person performs when they want to know if anything has changed without appearing to want to know. "Good morning," she said. "Did you eat toast?" I said. "I made it myself. Hope that's all right." Something crossed her face too fast to name gone before it fully formed. "Of course," she said warmly. "That's what the kitchen is for." She picked up her laptop bag and walked toward the office. I kept my eyes on my coffee cup and listened to the sound of her footsteps slow briefly outside the office door. A pause, then continuing on. She had checked. She hadn't found anything different. But she had checked. That evening, Marcus called the house landline, the one that had been reconnected. I noticed only after my arrival, as though a phone in the house was suddenly useful again. Olivia answered in the kitchen, and I listened from the hallway. "He's been fine," she said. "Quiet, ate his meals." A pause while Marcus spoke. "He asked about the paperwork before you bring it." Another pause longer. "I know. I told you just come home Friday and we'll get it done. Stop worrying." She hung up and stood in the kitchen for a moment, with her hand still on the receiver. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked toward the back of the house without looking in my direction. I went to Ethan's room, sat on the board, and texted Waters the full summary of everything I had found. Her response took longer this time. When it came, it was 3 words. "Nathan, call me." I dialed. She picked up immediately. "The email you found," she said without preamble. "The one about the accountant. The name Raymond, I ran it. Raymond Holt, former CFO of Marcus's company, terminated 8 months ago." A pause. "Nathan, he filed a complaint with the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation 6 weeks ago. He has been waiting for a second independent witness to corroborate his evidence." The room was very quiet around me. "He's been waiting for someone like me," I said. "Yes," Waters said. "He has." I waited until the house went completely quiet. Olivia's light went off at 10:43. I lay on Ethan's bed in the dark and counted the minutes, not because I needed to, but because the habit of counting was the habit of patience, and patience was what 30 years of federal investigations had taught me to treat as a weapon. At 11:51, I heard the last sound from her side of the house, the click of a vent closing. Then nothing. I got up. The locked filing cabinet had a second compartment. I had not fully searched a narrow lateral section behind the main drawers, accessible only if you knew it was there. I had been thinking about it since the previous morning, since the moment I photographed the emails and slid everything back into place, and understood that a woman with Olivia's training would not keep her most important documents in the first place you looked. She had left the emails in the bottom drawer because they were the layer she expected someone to find if they found anything at all. The real material would be somewhere that required you to already know what you were looking for. I found it behind a manila envelope of old tax returns, a court filing, 41 pages tabbed and color-coded, with the kind of organizational precision that told me a lawyer had assembled it with intention and care. The cover page read, "Petition for appointment of conservator of the person and estate. In the matter of Ethan James Cole, proposed conservatee." My legs went unsteady. I sat down on the floor, right there back against the cabinet, and read. Marcus had filed the petition 6 weeks ago. The grounds were spread across 12 pages. Ethan's alleged cognitive decline, his supposed inability to manage his own finances, a documented history of what the petition called poor decision-making and susceptibility to financial exploitation. Every paragraph was precise, every paragraph was plausible, and every paragraph was constructed from real events bent just far enough to mean something entirely different from what had actually happened. The garage incident from day 44 in the notebook, the one where Ethan's back gave out, and Marcus said he was being dramatic, had been reframed in the petition as an example of Ethan's increasing physical instability and lack of judgment regarding his own limitations. The disconnected phone line was described as Ethan's own request to simplify his household. The bank card Marcus had taken was characterized as a voluntary transfer of financial management to a trusted family member. 30 years of reading fraud documents. I had never felt nausea this specific before. The declaration of medical incapacity had been signed by a Dr. Peter Calloway, a name that appeared nowhere in any of Ethan's medical records I had seen. A quick search on my phone told me he operated a small private practice in Glendale, had graduated from a medical school I did not recognize, and had faced 2 separate complaints with the California Medical Board in the past 4 years. Neither complaint had resulted in a formal action. Both had been settled quietly. He had been paid to sign a document declaring my brother mentally incapacitated. I did not need more than 2 minutes to understand that. The court hearing was scheduled for 17 days from tonight. If the petition was approved, Marcus would become Ethan's legal conservator under California probate code, with full authority over his finances, his medical decisions, his living arrangements, and every significant choice in his daily life. Ethan would have no legal standing to object. He would have no legal standing to do anything at all. He would still be alive. He would still be breathing, but his life in every meaningful legal sense would no longer belong to him. I sat on that floor for 4 minutes. I know because I watched the seconds count up on my phone screen, and I made myself sit with the full weight of what I had just read, rather than move before I had absorbed it completely. 4 minutes. Then I photographed every page, replaced the folder with the same care I used for everything, closed the cabinet, and called Waters. She answered before the second ring. "Talk to me." "Conservatorship petition." My voice came out steady. I had learned a long time ago that the moments requiring the most steadiness were exactly the moments when steadiness costs the most. Filed 6 weeks ago. Hearing in 17 days. The medical declaration was signed by someone named Peter Calloway, not Ethan's physician. Small practice in Glendale, 2 medical board complaints in 4 years. Waters exhaled sharply, the breath of a woman who had spent 15 years in elder abuse investigations and still had a reaction to this. "That's fraud on the court," she said. "Submitting a false medical declaration in a conservatorship proceeding is a felony under California Penal Code 134. Nathan, if this goes through, Ethan loses everything. Financial control, medical decisions, legal standing, all of it transferred to Marcus permanently by court order. It doesn't go through. We have 17 days, and we still need corroboration on the financial. It doesn't go through," I said again, the second time steadier than the first. "What do you need from me right now?" Waters was quiet for 3 seconds. When she spoke, her voice had shifted into the tone I recognized from the best investigators I had worked with. Over the years, not louder, but cleaner. Organized, the sound of a person who has processed the information and is now only interested in action. "I'm opening a formal elder financial abuse investigation under California Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 15610.30, she said. "That gives me subpoena authority and legal standing to request the court delay the hearing pending investigation. But I need the audio order before Friday. Marcus comes home Friday." "Yes." "Then I'm calling the judge tonight." A pause. "Nathan, don't move on anything else until I confirm the order. Every piece of evidence from this point forward needs to be airtight. No exceptions." "Understood. Get some sleep." I almost laughed. I ended the call and stood in the dark office with the phone warm in my hand, looking at the filing cabinet that held 41 pages designed to erase my brother from his own life while he was still breathing. 17 days. Each one of them mattered. I put the phone in my pocket and walked back down the hallway to Ethan's room. Outside the window, the Pasadena neighborhood was perfectly quiet. Porch lights on, timers, sprinklers set for 3 a.m., the ordinary machinery of other people's ordinary lives running without interruption. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Ethan's watch on my wrist. The cream face, the small, steady second hand moving the way it always moved, patient and exact and entirely indifferent to what was happening in the room around it. I had 16 days left to burn it down. I intended to use all of them. Olivia had kept every medical appointment on Ethan's calendar without exception. I had figured out why, on the second day canceling them, would have required explaining to a physician why a patient was suddenly unavailable, and physicians asked follow-up questions that Olivia could not afford. So she kept the appointments and came along to manage what got said inside them. It was the kind of careful thinking that had kept this situation invisible for 14 months. It was also the mistake that was about to cost her everything. Dr. Susan Porter had been Ethan's physician for 9 years. Her Her office was on the third floor of a medical building, 2 blocks from Huntington Memorial, a clean, unhurried space that smelled like coffee and old paperbacks. She was 58, compact, with silver-streaked hair, and the particular stillness of someone who had spent decades learning to listen before speaking. Olivia sat in the waiting room. I went in alone. Dr. Porter looked up from the chart when I entered, and something moved behind her eyes, a quick, precise recalibration that she covered immediately with a professional smile. 9 years of treating Ethan. She knew his face. She was already asking herself a question. I sat down across from her, and she began the standard review: blood pressure, the back pain, sleep, nutrition. I answered carefully, using everything Ethan had told me, staying close to the documented history. Then she asked about his emotional state. "Are you feeling more like yourself lately, Ethan?" I looked at her. She looked back. The question had an extra layer to it. I could hear it, and I made a decision in the space of 2 seconds. I reached for the small notepad on her desk. She watched me pick it up without stopping me. I wrote 7 words and turned the pad toward her. "I am not Ethan. I am his brother." Dr. Porter read it. Her expression did not change by a single degree. She took the notepad, tore the page off, folded it once, and placed it in the pocket of her coat. Then she continued the appointment as though nothing had happened, except that her documentation became noticeably more thorough, her questions more specific, her notes longer and more detailed than anything I had seen her write in the first 10 minutes. She was building a record. When she finished, she looked at me with the calm authority of someone who had made a decision and was comfortable with it. "I want to schedule a full evaluation next week. Comprehensive physical, cognitive, nutritional. I'll need your son-in-law's cooperation on the scheduling." I understood immediately. She was creating a reason to see Ethan again, a legitimate medical reason that Olivia could not refuse without raising questions. "Of course," I said. In the waiting room, Olivia stood when she saw us. "Everything all right?" "Dr. Porter wants some additional tests," I said. Olivia's jaw tightened by a fraction. She looked at Dr. Porter. "Is that really necessary?" Dr. Porter met her eyes with the pleasant, immovable expression of someone who had not become a physician by being moved by social pressure. "I wouldn't suggest it if it weren't Mrs. Cole. We want to make sure everything is being properly monitored. I'm sure you agree." It was not a question. Olivia heard that. "Of course," Olivia said. In the car on the way home, Olivia drove without speaking for 4 blocks. Then, "You seemed different in there today." "The doctor says my memory is going," I said, looking out the window. "I get confused sometimes." "Yes." Her voice had flattened in a way that had nothing to do with the words themselves. "That's what happens." She did not say anything else. But when we stopped at a red light, I watched her hand tighten on the steering wheel until her knuckles went pale. She was not satisfied with that answer. She was deciding what to do about it. That evening she called Marcus. I stood in the hallway and listened through the kitchen door. "Come home tomorrow," she said. "Don't wait until evening. Come in the morning." A pause. "Because I said so, Marcus. Something is off, and I want this done." She hung up. Her footsteps moved toward the hallway. I was back in Ethan's room with the door closed before she reached the hall. I texted Waters one line. "She's moving the timeline. Marcus coming tomorrow morning." Waters replied, "In under a minute, audio order approved. You're clear to record as of tonight." Marcus arrived at 9:14 in the morning. I heard his car in the driveway, heard Olivia's quick footsteps crossing the kitchen floor to meet him, heard the low exchange of voices near the front door that stopped the moment I appeared in the hallway. Marcus looked at me with a smile that reached his eyes just far enough to be convincing and said, "Dad, you look good." He crossed the room and hugged me firm, practiced the hug of a man who understood its function. "Marcus," I said. "We'll talk tonight," he said. "Get some rest this morning." He and Olivia disappeared into the back office together. The door clicked shut. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, and waited. Olivia had left the house unlocked for 40 minutes the previous afternoon while she ran an errand. I had used 35 of those minutes in the small office working through the unlocked bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, the one she used for active working documents rather than archived records. Beneath a folder of contractor invoices, I had found a stack of printed emails paper-clipped together, the top sheet creased from repeated folding. The kind of document a person prints because they want to read it away from a screen, in quiet, and refer back to it without leaving a digital trail. I had photographed every page and replaced the stack exactly as I found it. Now, sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, I read back through the photographs on my secondary phone. The emails were between Olivia and Marcus, spanning 8 months. Reading them in sequence was like watching a building being constructed from the foundation up, each message adding another layer, another support beam, another calculated decision made in advance of the moment it would be needed. Olivia to Marcus, 11 months ago. Your father trusts you completely. That's the asset. Don't waste it on sentiment. Marcus to Olivia, 10 months ago. The conservatorship attorney says we need a medical declaration. The doctor Ethan actually sees will never sign it. Olivia to Marcus. I know someone. Leave that part to me. Focus on getting the financial transfers drafted. Once the conservatorship is approved, everything moves automatically, and there's nothing he can do about it. Marcus, 8 months ago, Raymond is asking questions about the Q3 numbers. He says he won't sign the report. Olivia, terminate him today. NDA and the severance. Do not let him leave that building with anything in his hands. And then 6 months ago, a single email from Olivia that I read 3 times before I was certain I had understood it correctly. If anything goes wrong, the paper trail points to Ethan. His signatures are on everything. His cognitive decline is documented. By the time anyone looks closely, Marcus will be the one who tried to protect a confused old man from his own bad decisions. Make sure you understand what that means. You are never the villain in this story. You are always the son who tried. My coffee had gone cold. I had not noticed. The nausea was physical, a slow roll through my chest that had nothing to do with what I had eaten and everything to do with the specific premeditated coldness of those words. You are never the villain. They had not stumbled into this. They had architected it email by email, month by month, with the patience of people who believed they would never be found. I texted Waters the photographs. Her reply came back in 4 minutes. This confirms Olivia as the primary architect. Marcus was the instrument. Nathan, she has legal training. She knew exactly what she was building. A second message, I ran her bar history. JD, from Southwestern 2014, failed California bar twice. Worked as a paralegal for 5 years. She knows where the lines are. She just thought she was staying behind them. I put the phone in my pocket and looked up. Olivia was standing in the kitchen doorway. I did not know how long she had been there. Her expression was composed, pleasant even, but her eyes were doing something different from her mouth. They were moving across the kitchen in that same quick inventory-taking sweep I had noticed on her first day back from her errands, looking for what had changed. Thinking about something, she asked. Just the coffee, I said. It went cold. She crossed to the counter and poured herself a glass of water, stood with her back to me for a moment. Marcus wants to go over the paperwork after dinner tonight. Nothing complicated. She turned around. I just want you to know that everything we're doing is because we love you. You understand that, don't you? The word love landed in my chest like something counterfeit, the right shape, the wrong material. I understand, I said. She smiled and walked back toward the office. My hands flat on the table had been trembling for the past 2 minutes. Not from fear, from the effort of keeping everything I felt from showing on a face that was not entirely mine. That evening, I called Waters from Ethan's room. She's the one, I said. Marcus is scared. Olivia is not. I know, Waters said, which makes her more dangerous. A pause. The audio order is active. Whatever Marcus says tonight, we'll have it. And if he doesn't say enough, then we use what you already found. But Nathan, her voice dropped half a register. Let him talk. Guilty people always want to explain themselves. You know that better than anyone. I did know that. I set the phone down and looked at Ethan's watch on my wrist, the cream face, the cracked leather band, the small, steady tick of a man who had trusted the wrong people for 14 months and survived it anyway. Tonight, Marcus would come to the table thinking he held every card. He had forgotten which Cole brother had spent 30 years learning how the game was played. Before I tell you what Marcus said, that Saturday night sitting in his father's living room, thinking he was speaking to a confused old man who would never remember the details. Drop a 9 in the comments to let me know you're still here with me. I want to know how many of you saw this coming. Heads up, this story contains fictional elements crafted for entertainment and educational purposes. Some details may not reflect any single real event. If that's not for you, it's completely okay to step away and find content that fits better. Dinner was pot roast and silence. Olivia had cooked it herself, a deliberate choice. I suspected the kind of domestic normalcy that was meant to signal that everything in this house was fine and loving and exactly as it appeared. She served Marcus first, then herself, then set a smaller plate at the far end of the counter for me, without comment. I carried it to the table and sat down and ate while Marcus talked about traffic on the 10 and a client meeting that had run long and the particular difficulty of managing people who didn't understand long-term vision. He did not ask me a single question for the entire meal. Afterward, Olivia disappeared into the back of the house. Marcus settled onto the couch in the living room with the ease of a man in his own home, which was exactly what he believed this to be. He set a leather portfolio on the coffee table, poured 2 fingers of whiskey from the bottle on the sideboard, did not offer me any, and looked at me with the particular expression of a man about to do something he had practiced. "Sit down, Dad," he said. "Let's talk." I sat in the chair across from him. In the collar of Ethan's flannel shirt pressed against my skin was a device the size of a shirt button, cleared by the court order Waters had secured 2 nights ago. Every word in this room was being transmitted to a receiver in Waters' car parked 4 blocks away. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and his voice dropped into the register that people use when they want to sound like they are confiding something precious. "I know this has been hard," he said. "The last year, all the changes. I want you to know that everything Olivia and I have done, every decision, has been about protecting you." "Protecting me," I said. "You're 65, Dad. The world is complicated. Money is complicated. You worked your whole life, and you deserve to have someone looking out for your interests." He picked up the whiskey glass, turned it in his hand. "That's all the paperwork is. Protection." I kept my face soft and slightly confused, the expression of a man receiving information he is trying to process slowly. "But the house," I said. "The transfer. If your name is on the house, then it's safe," Marcus said. He said it quickly, the way people say things they have rehearsed. "Dad, if something happened to you, medical bills, legal issues, anything, the house could be at risk. Under my name, it's protected, for the family." He set the glass down. "You trust me, don't you?" I looked at him for a long moment. At the face of the boy Ethan had sold his first house to help. At the man who had signed his father's name on a document while that same father was unconscious in a hospital bed. "Of course," I said. Marcus smiled, the smile of a man who had heard what he needed. "Good. Because here's the thing. Dad and I need you to really hear this." He leaned in closer. "The company has had some difficulties. Cash flow issues, nothing permanent, nothing that won't resolve, but right now there are people asking questions. Investors who don't understand that these things take time." His voice stayed warm, controlled, careful. "If those questions get too loud, we may need to show that the business decisions were made collaboratively, that you were involved, that you understood and agreed." My chest went very still. "Agreed to what?" I asked. "To the investment structure, to the way the accounts were managed." He held my gaze. "Your signature is already on some of the documents, Dad. You signed them, you might not remember all the details, that's okay, that's completely normal. But the record shows you were part of the decision-making. That's actually a good thing. It shows you were engaged, involved in control of your own affairs." A beat. "You see what I mean?" I saw exactly what he meant. He was telling me in the careful language of a man who believed he was speaking to someone who could not fully process what they were hearing, that if his company's fraud was discovered, Ethan's forged signatures would be presented as evidence of voluntary participation, that Ethan's age and documented confusion would be offered as explanation, that the son had been protecting the father all along, and wasn't it tragic that the father had made such poor decisions in his diminished state? "I think so," I said slowly. "You're saying my name, my signature would show I was part of it." "Exactly." He sat back satisfied. "So when we go over the paperwork tomorrow, just remember, this is all to protect you. Everything points back to decisions you made. That's actually your protection." In the collar of Ethan's shirt, the device recorded every word. 4 blocks away, I knew Waters was listening. I nodded slowly and said, "I trust you, Marcus." He smiled and picked up his whiskey glass. "Good man." After he went to bed, I sat in the dark living room for a long time without moving. The device against my skin felt very small and very significant at the same time. Outside, a car passed on the quiet street, its headlights sweeping briefly across the ceiling. My phone vibrated. Waters. Got it all. Admission of intent to use a third-party signature as cover for financial fraud. Confession that he knew the signatures were on documents the signatory didn't understand. This is wire fraud, elder financial abuse conspiracy. Nathan, this is enough to move. I type back, not yet. I still need Raymond, and I need Ethan in the room when it ends. A pause, then understood. But Nathan, be careful. Olivia is smarter than Marcus, and she's been watching you since the appointment. I looked toward the hallway. Dark, quiet. Somewhere in the back of the house, Olivia was either sleeping or thinking. With her, I was never entirely sure which. I typed one word back to Waters I know. I left the house at 7:19 in the morning while Marcus was still asleep, and Olivia was in the shower. I had told her the night before casually that I wanted to walk to the pharmacy on the corner. My blood pressure medication, I said, running low. She had nodded without looking up from her phone. It was the kind of errand that required no escort and raised no questions, and I had chosen it carefully for exactly those reasons. I drove to the hotel instead. Waters was already in the conference room when I arrived, a small windowless space off the lobby that smelled like carpet cleaner and stale air, the kind of room designed for conversations that needed walls around them. She had a legal pad, 2 cups of coffee, and a manila folder thick enough that it landed with weight when she set it on the table. She looked at me the way people look at someone they are reassessing upward. "You got more in 8 days than most investigators get in 8 weeks, she said. "I had motivation," I said. "Sit down. We need to talk about Olivia." I sat. Waters opened the folder and laid out what her team had assembled, a timeline that stretched back 26 months longer than I had realized. Olivia had begun researching California conservatorship law 18 months before the first document was filed. She had contacted the fraudulent notary Robert Fisk 14 months ago, 2 months before his commission was officially surrendered, which meant she had known it was lapsing and used it, deliberately creating a seal that would appear legitimate in a casual review, but would crumble under forensic examination. She wanted it to look real enough to work and fragile enough to blame on incompetence if it was ever challenged, Waters said. Not her incompetence, Marcus's. The chill that moved through me was the specific chill of recognizing a mind that thought the way criminals thought, not impulsively, not desperately, but with the long patience of someone who had planned for contingencies before the contingencies existed. The exit strategy, I said, built in from the beginning. Waters turned a page. Every document that could be questioned has Marcus's name on the instruction. Every email that could be damaging was sent from Marcus's account. Her fingerprints are on the architecture, but the signature on the construction is his. She looked up. If this had gone through, if the conservatorship was approved and the transfers completed, and if it had ever unraveled afterward, Marcus would have been the one holding the evidence. Olivia would have been the concerned wife who deferred to her husband's judgment. I thought about the email. "You are never the villain. You are always the son who tried." She had written that to him like a gift. It was a cage. "He doesn't know," I said. "I don't think he knows the full shape of it," Waters agreed. "He knows what he did. He doesn't know what she built around him." She paused. "That's going to matter in court, but it doesn't change his culpability." "No," I said, "it doesn't." Waters set a second document on the table. Raymond Holt filed his complaint with DFPI 43 days ago. He has 2 complete sets of financial reports, the real numbers and the version prepared for investors. He has internal emails ordering the falsification. He has a record of his termination and the NDA he refused to sign. She tapped the page. DFPI opened a preliminary investigation, but stalled. Because Raymond's credibility is compromised, Marcus's lawyers immediately framed him as a disgruntled former employee with financial motive. They're not wrong that he has motive, but that doesn't make him wrong. "They need a second witness," I said. "Someone without a personal stake in the company. Someone whose credibility is unimpeachable." Waters looked at me steadily. "A retired federal investigator who entered the household under legal power of attorney and independently discovered the same financial discrepancies Raymond documented from inside. That's me. That's you." She slid the folder across the table. "Raymond has been waiting 43 days for someone to make his evidence usable. The moment you sit down with him and provide a corroborating statement, DFPI can issue an emergency cease and desist against the company, freeze the accounts, stop any further transfers. A beat, including the house." I looked at the folder. Inside were photographs. I recognized the documents I had found in Ethan's filing cabinet, now organized alongside Raymond's internal records into a coherent, damning sequence. Seeing them side by side made the fraud legible in a way that each piece alone did not. Raymond had the company's skeleton. I had the family's. Together, they were a complete anatomy of a crime that had been running for 2 years. "Set up the meeting," I said. "I already did." Waters checked her watch. "Day after tomorrow, 7 a.m. before you need to be back at the house." She paused. "Nathan, once you meet with Raymond Marcus, we'll know we're building a formal case. Things will move faster. Olivia will push harder." "Good," I said. "Pressure makes people make mistakes." Waters looked at me for a moment with the expression of someone choosing whether to say the next thing. She said it. "How is Ethan?" The question landed differently than I expected, not as a procedural check, but as something genuine from a woman who had spent 15 years watching families get destroyed by exactly this kind of careful, patient cruelty. "He called last night," I said. "He asked if his rosebush was still alive." My throat tightened. He sounded better, steadier, like he was starting to remember who he was before all this. Waters nodded slowly. "Then, let's make sure he gets to keep that." She gathered the papers, and I drank the coffee that had gone lukewarm while we talked. And outside the hotel window, the San Gabriel Mountains sat clean and still against the morning sky. And I thought about Ethan in my house in Greenwich, sleeping in a quiet room with a working phone and a door that didn't lock from the outside. 14 days until the conservatorship hearing. 12 days until it ended. Margaret Collins answered the door in a bathrobe and reading glasses, holding a mug of tea with both hands, and the moment she saw my face, her eyes filled so fast that the tears were spilling before she had even fully opened the door. "Ethan?" Her voice cracked on the single syllable. She reached out with one trembling hand and touched my cheek. Her fingers were cool and papery and shaking badly. "Oh, Ethan, you look terrible. You look absolutely terrible, and I have been so worried about you." Her genuine distress hit me somewhere I had not fully prepared for. I covered her hand with mine and said gently, "Margaret, I need to tell you something important. Can we go inside?" She was 72 years old and had lived next door to Ethan for 15 years, long enough to have watched Marcus grow from a young man visiting on holidays into whatever he had become now. Her living room was warm and cluttered in the way of someone who had accumulated a full life and saw no reason to edit photographs on every surface, a bookshelf that had long since given up maintaining any organizational principle, a cat sleeping on the radiator cover with profound commitment. I sat across from her and explained briefly and plainly who I actually was. Margaret stared at me for 3 full seconds. Then she pressed her free hand over her mouth, and a sound came out from behind it that was equal parts sob and disbelieving laugh. "You're Nathan," she said. "You're the brother. Ethan talked about you. He always said you were the serious one." Her chin wobbled badly. "Is he all right? Where is he?" "He's safe," I said. "He's with family. But I need your help, Margaret. I need to know what you saw." What she had seen turned out to be considerable. She told me about the morning last November when she had watched Marcus stand in the driveway and shout at Ethan over a trash bin that had been left at the wrong angle. Ethan had been in his bathrobe. It was 41 degrees. He had stood there with his arms wrapped around himself, nodding, while Marcus's voice carried clearly across the property line. She had stood at her window with her phone in her hand, trying to decide whether to call someone. She had not called. The guilt of that decision had not left her. She told me about the afternoon she had seen Ethan carrying boxes from the garage to the backyard. Heavy boxes, the kind that required 2 people alone in July. Heat stopping every few minutes to press his hand against his lower back. Marcus had been sitting on the porch, watching, not helping. Her voice broke on that detail. Her tea had gone cold and forgotten on the table beside her. She had called Adult Protective Services that time. A caseworker had come to the house 3 days later. Marcus had met them at the door, pleasant and organized with a prepared explanation. Ethan enjoyed staying active, the doctor had recommended, light physical activity for his back. He was simply helping organize a storage project of his own design. The caseworker had spoken briefly with Ethan, who had confirmed in Marcus's presence that everything was fine. The case had been closed within the week. "I should have pushed harder," Margaret said. Her hands were shaking around the mug. "I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm making trouble for a family that doesn't deserve it? A tear ran down her cheek and she did not wipe it. He looked so tired, Nathan, every time I saw him, like he was carrying something he couldn't put down. He was, I said. My throat was tight enough that the words came out rougher than I intended. But he's putting it down now. That's why I'm here. Margaret set her mug down and straightened in her chair with the particular resolve of a woman who had made a decision. Tell me what you need. She had photographs, 4 of them taken on her phone over a period of 6 months. Ethan carrying boxes, Ethan weeding the garden in summer heat, while Olivia sat in the shade. Ethan standing alone on the porch in the rain, because as Margaret explained, the back door had been locked, and he had been outside when they locked it, and he had stood there for 20 minutes before anyone let him in. That last one made my hands curl into fists against my knees. Will you make a formal statement? I asked. To a detective from the sheriff's department. Yes, Margaret said without hesitation. I should have done it 11 months ago. I'm not going to miss the chance again. Frank Delgado was waiting for me at a picnic table in Garfield Park 20 minutes away, with 2 cups of takeout coffee and the expression of a man who had been rehearsing this conversation for a long time and was ready to have it. He was 68 barrel-chested, with the careful movements of someone managing a bad knee, and he had known Ethan since they were both 26 years old and coaching the same Little League team, in a league neither of them had any business coaching. He pushed one of the coffees across the table without preamble. You're not him? He said. No, I said. I'm his brother. Frank nodded slowly like this confirmed something he had already worked out. I figured something was different. Ethan never liked black coffee. He looked at the cup in front of me. I brought 2 black because I didn't know which one was coming. Something about that small, careful observation, the 40 years of friendship compressed into a coffee order, made my chest ache in a way I had not expected. Frank told me that Ethan had called him regularly every 2 or 3 weeks for the 30 years they had been friends. The calls had stopped abruptly 18 months ago. Not tapered off, stopped. 1 week, there was a call. The next week, there was not, and there had not been one since. He showed me the last text message Ethan had sent. It was 4 lines. Frank, I can't talk much anymore. Marcus thinks it's better this way. I'm sorry. 4 lines, 40 years of friendship, and 4 lines of apology for an ending that had not been his to make. Frank's jaw was tight when he put the phone away. His eyes were red at the rims, but he was not going to cry. I could tell he was the kind of man who converted grief directly into something harder and more purposeful. What do you need from me? He asked. The text, a statement. Your account of the friendship and when contact stopped. I paused. And anything else Ethan told you in the months before the calls stopped about how things were at home? Frank looked at his coffee for a moment. Then he said, he told me once, maybe 2 months before it went quiet, he said Marcus was helping him manage his finances. Said it like it was a good thing, like he was relieved. His voice dropped. I remember thinking it sounded strange. Ethan was never careless with money. He was a school teacher for 30 years. You don't survive that on careless. He looked up. I should have said something. You're saying it now? I said. Frank nodded. His hand around the coffee cup was steady, but I could see the tendons in his forearm standing out with the effort of keeping it that way. Tell Ethan, he said, that I still have those Giants tickets whenever he's ready. I stood up and shook his hand, and his grip was firm and held a beat longer than a normal handshake, the kind of grip that means something beyond courtesy. Walking back to the car, I checked my phone. A message from a number I did not recognize. Not Waters, not Okafor, not Raymond. I know you're not Ethan. We need to talk. M. I stopped on the path and read it twice. M. Marcus was at the house. Olivia never used initials, which meant there was someone else. Daniel Crawford called me back within 3 minutes of my reply. I had been standing on the path in Garfield Park with Frank Delgado's handshake still warm on my palm and a message on my phone that had no business existing. The M could have been Marcus. It could have been a wrong number. It could have been something Olivia had arranged to test me. I had replied with 2 words, "Who are you?" and waited. 3 minutes was a short time to call back if you were unsure. It was exactly the right amount of time if you had been waiting for someone to ask. My name is Daniel Crawford, he said. I was Marcus's business partner until 20 months ago, when Olivia decided I was a liability and arranged my exit with the kind of efficiency that told me she had been planning it for a while. His voice was controlled, but the control was doing visible work, the voice of a man who had rehearsed being calm about something that still made him furious. I have a settlement agreement with a non-disparagement clause and a lawyer who has told me on 4 separate occasions to stay quiet and cash the check. But you didn't stay quiet, I said. I stayed quiet for 19 months. A pause. Then I started seeing someone coming and going from that house who moved wrong. He explained. His old office had been 3 blocks from Ethan's house, the office he had cleaned out on a Tuesday afternoon, when Olivia had his keycard deactivated before he had finished packing his desk. For 20 months, he had driven past that street twice a week. Not because he was watching, he said, but because the route was there, and he had not yet found a reason to change it. He had met Ethan 6 times over 4 years of partnership dinners and company events. Ethan always led with his right shoulder when he walked a slight forward lean that Daniel had noticed the way you notice small things about people you meet repeatedly in formal settings. The man coming and going from the house in the past 10 days led with his left. I didn't know what you were doing, Daniel said, but I knew you weren't him, and whatever you were doing, I thought you should know what I know. He had emails. Correspondence from before the buyout. Olivia discussing the conservatorship framework 18 months before the petition was filed in language that told him reading it now that the plan had been in motion long before any of them knew it existed. He had not understood what he was reading when he saved it. He understood now. I told him to send everything to Detective Waters. Already done, he said. 30 minutes ago. I've been sitting on those emails for 8 months waiting for someone to be in a position to use them. A beat. Mr. Cole, whatever you're doing in that house, finish it. I said I intended to. Raymond Holt was already at the corner table when I arrived at the coffee shop on Colorado Boulevard at 7 minutes past 7. He was 54 years old and looked older in the particular way of a man who has been carrying something heavy for 8 months, with nowhere to set it down. His coffee was untouched. On the table in front of him was an accordion folder that he kept one hand on throughout the time it took me to cross the room and sit down the grip of a man guarding the only leverage he had left. He looked up when I pulled out the chair. His eyes were steady but rimmed red in the way that has nothing to do with tears and everything to do with the kind of sleeplessness that becomes a permanent condition after enough months of it. "You're Nathan Cole," he said. Not a question, a confirmation the way a man speaks when he has been told something and needs to hear it confirmed out loud before he can proceed. "Yes. Waters told me what you found inside the house." He pressed his lips together hard, and a muscle jumped in his jaw, and for a moment he looked like a man deciding whether to say the next thing. He said it. "I need you to know, I tried to stop it from the inside. When Marcus told me to adjust the Q3 numbers, I refused. I put it in writing an email to Marcus, stating that the reports did not reflect actual fund performance, and that I could not certify them under my professional license." His hand on the accordion folder had gone white-knuckled. He fired me that same afternoon. By the time the security guard walked me to the elevator, the IT department had already revoked my credentials. I couldn't have gone back for a staple off my own desk. "But you kept copies," I said. He nodded. "I kept everything. I had been keeping copies for 6 weeks before that day, since the first time Marcus asked me to adjust a number, and I understood what adjusting it actually meant." He pushed the folder across the table with both hands. 2 complete sets of financial statements. The real numbers and the version prepared for investors. 18 months of discrepancy. Internal emails in which Marcus explicitly instructed me to falsify the quarterly performance data. A spreadsheet I built myself, tracking which investor accounts were being used to service obligations to other investors. He met my eyes. 12 families, Mr. Cole. People who trusted us with their retirement savings. One couple retired school teachers from Glendale put in everything they had saved in 30 years. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee I had not touched. I opened the folder and looked at the first page. The numbers were exactly as Waters had described, organized with the meticulous clarity of a man who had understood from the moment he packed his desk that this documentation would need to be irrefutable. Every figure cross-referenced, every email time-stamped, every discrepancy annotated in Raymond's precise accountant's handwriting, with a note explaining what the correct figure should have been and why. This was not the work of a disgruntled employee building a case for leverage. This was the work of a man who had believed in doing things correctly for 30 years and had refused to stop believing in it when it cost him his job. "DFPI received your complaint 6 weeks ago," I said. "Why did the investigation stall?" Raymond's jaw tightened. Marcus's lawyers filed a response within a week. They characterized me as a disgruntled former employee seeking financial leverage in an ongoing compensation dispute, a pause that cost him something. They were not entirely wrong that I'm angry, but anger does not make the spreadsheets inaccurate, and my anger does not change what those 12 families lost. No, I said, it doesn't. I closed the folder and slid it back across the table toward him. Keep the originals. Waters will coordinate the formal submission to DFPI. Once they have corroborating testimony from an independent witness, someone with no financial stake in the company, they can issue an emergency cease and desist, freeze the accounts, stop any further transfers. I paused. Including the house. Raymond stared at the folder. His jaw worked through something private. When he finally looked up, his eyes were very bright and his voice had dropped into the register that men use when they are close to the edge of composure and have decided to stay on the right side of it by sheer force of will. 8 months, he said. I have been sitting across from that folder for 8 months thinking that no one was going to come, that I was going to spend whatever was left of my career being the man who made accusations he couldn't prove, because the only person who could prove them had already been discredited. He stopped, swallowed once hard. Someone came, I said. He nodded once quick tight, the nod of a man who does not trust himself to say more. He picked up his coffee for the first time and drank, and I sat across from him and let him have the moment without filling it, because some moments need room the way grief does. Outside on Colorado Boulevard, the morning traffic was thickening toward rush hour. Somewhere, 3 miles northeast, Marcus Cole was sitting in his father's house, believing that the next 9 days were going to go the way the previous 20 months had gone, quietly, efficiently, without consequence. He was wrong about the 9 days. He was wrong about all of it. I left Raymond Holt at that corner table with his accordion folder and his coffee and something I hoped was the first clean breath he had taken in 8 months. I had a house to get back to and a timeline that had just gotten shorter. He had 9 days left. I intended to use every one of them. Marcus was waiting in the living room when I got back, not sitting, standing, arms crossed one shoulder against the wall in the particular posture of a man who had positioned himself to watch a door. He had been there long enough that his coffee had gone cold on the side table beside him. The cup was exactly where Olivia always placed things, at the precise angle that said someone had put it there deliberately, not set it down while thinking about something else. "Where did you go?" he asked. "Walked by," I said. My back was stiff. "You were gone 2 hours. I sat in the park for a while." I moved toward the hallway with the careful, unhurried gait of a man who did not feel he owed anyone an explanation, but was too tired to argue. I liked the quiet. "Dad?" His voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but thinner now, stretched over something harder, underneath the way paint stretches over a crack in a wall. "Sit down for a minute." I sat. Marcus pulled his chair closer than he usually positioned it, close enough that I could see the specific tension in his jaw, the faint tightness around his eyes that had not been there 3 days ago. He studied my face with an attention that was entirely different from his usual performance of attentiveness. That had been the attention of a man managing an impression. This was the attention of a man trying to solve a problem. He was genuinely afraid of something. "Do you remember Lake Tahoe?" he asked. "Just the two of us, you and me, summer. I was maybe 12. The question landed with the quiet precision of a test. I recognized it immediately, the kind of specific, intimate memory that lives between only two people and cannot be researched or reproduced from the outside. He had chosen it carefully, something that would reveal in the answering whether the man sitting across from him was actually who he appeared to be. I had prepared for this. In our late-night calls over the past 2 weeks, Ethan had walked me through every significant trip, every story, every moment that Marcus might reach for if he started to doubt. He had done it with the methodical care of a man who understood that the details of his own life might one day need to be handed to someone else to carry. "The cabin with the broken porch step," I said. "You fell through it the first morning and thought your ankle was broken." I paused the way a man pauses when a memory surfaces slowly. "It wasn't broken. You cried anyway." Something moved across Marcus's face. Not satisfaction, something more complicated than that. A door opening and closing quickly, a calculation happening behind his eyes that I was not meant to see. He looked down at his hands for a moment. When he looked back up, the assessment was still there, but it had shifted. He had not found what he was looking for, which meant he had not been able to rule out what he was afraid of either. "You seem different lately," he said. The hospital changes a person, I said. Coming home changes a person. He held my gaze for a long moment. His jaw worked once the specific movement of a man swallowing something he has decided not to say yet. Then he stood up, walked toward the kitchen without another word, and I heard him say something to Olivia in a voice too low to carry. Olivia's response was quieter still. Then the sound of the back door opening and closing as Marcus went outside. I stayed in the chair and looked at the wall and thought about Raymond Holt sitting at a corner table on Colorado Boulevard with 8 months of evidence and no one to receive it. I thought about Margaret Collins pressing her hands over her mouth and a sound coming out that was half sob and half disbelieving laugh. I thought about Frank Delgado's grip lasting a beat longer than a normal handshake and about a text message that was 4 lines long and should never have needed to be sent. Olivia appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later. She was holding a document, 2 pages paper-clipped, which she set on the coffee table in front of me, with the careful placement of someone putting something down they wanted to appear casual about. Her expression was arranged warm, patient, helpful, but her eyes had the quality of a woman who has made a decision about something and is waiting to see if the decision was correct. "Just a formality," she said. "It confirms that you've been comfortable here, that the living arrangement has been voluntary, and that you're satisfied with how things have been managed." Her smile was precise. "For the court records, standard language." I looked at the document without touching it. Standard language was doing a great deal of work in that sentence. What the 2 pages actually contained I knew from the photograph I had taken of an identical draft I had found in the filing cabinet was a signed admission that Ethan had willingly participated in every financial arrangement Marcus had made on his behalf. A pre-signed confession. A shield designed to be produced the moment any of this unraveled with Ethan's signature at the bottom, proving that the confused old man had understood and agreed to all of it. "I'd like to read it first," I said. "Of course." Olivia sat down across from me. "Take your time." I picked it up, read it slowly, moving my lips slightly over words that required no sounding out, pausing at phrases that presented no difficulty at all. The performance of a man whose mind moved at a different speed now than it once had. Olivia watched me with the composed patience of a woman running a clock in her head that the man across from her could not see. After 4 minutes, I set it down. "I'd like Okafor to look at it," I said. "My lawyer." The composure cracked, not dramatically, not in a way that anyone at a distance would have caught, but the slight flattening around her eyes, the microsecond of recalibration. Before the smile reassembled itself, I caught it. In 30 years of reading people across tables, I had learned to watch for the moment between the stimulus and the response. That moment was where the truth lived. "That's not really necessary for something this simple," she said. "Humor an old man," I said. She smiled again, thinner this time, and picked up the document and walked back toward the office. I heard the drawer open and close. I heard the sound of her footsteps pause outside the office door, longer than they needed to before continuing on. She was recalibrating, deciding whether to push harder or pull back. With Olivia, every movement was a calculation. I went to Ethan's room and sat on the edge of the bed and texted Waters. She tried to get a signed voluntary compliance document. I deferred to Okafor. She didn't like it. Waters replied in under 2 minutes. "Good. That document would have been a problem. She's running out of moves." I set the phone down and pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. My lower back had been complaining since the morning, too many hours in hard chairs, too many days sleeping on a mattress that was not mine. I thought about Ethan in my house in Greenwich in the guest room, with the unlocked door and the window that faced the garden, and I thought about how long it had taken him to stop waking up at 4:45 every morning out of habit. An hour later, Marcus came to my door. He did not knock the way Olivia knocked. He did not use the flat authoritative rap that said the door existed as a courtesy and would be opened regardless. He knocked the way a person knocks when they are not entirely certain they want the door to open 3 times, the last one slightly lighter than the first 2, like a question losing confidence in itself. I opened it. He stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets and looked at me with something in his face I had not seen there before. Not the warmth he performed, not the strategy underneath it. Something younger than either of those things, and considerably less constructed the expression of a person who has spent a long time being certain about something, and has begun privately and against their will to be less certain. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Actually, are you okay?" The question landed differently than anything he had said to me in 11 days. because it sounded for just that moment like it might be real. Like the 12-year-old boy who had cried on a broken porch step might still exist somewhere inside the man standing in the doorway and had just briefly surfaced before he could stop it. "I'm tired, Marcus," I said. That much was absolutely true. He nodded slowly, then the younger thing in his face closed over, and what replaced it was the pressure stripped down and undecorated the voice of a man who has been told by someone smarter than him that there is no more time. "We need to finish the paperwork this week, Thursday. I need it done Thursday." "Okay," I said. He held my gaze for one more second. Then he turned and walked back down the hallway, shoulders square to the walk of a man who had made a decision and was now committed to it. And I closed the door and stood in the quiet of Ethan's room and texted Waters 4 words. "Thursday?" They moved it. Her reply came in under a minute. "So do we." Ethan came through the arrivals gate at 11:43, pulling a single carry-on bag, wearing the blue cardigan I had left in my closet in Greenwich for the past 3 years, because I kept forgetting to return it. He looked better than the hospital. Not well, not yet, but better in the specific way of a man who had slept in a room with an unlocked door for 2 weeks, and had begun slowly and cautiously to remember what that felt like. When he saw me, his face did something complicated, relief and grief arriving at the same moment, fighting each other for the same real estate. His eyes filled immediately and he pressed his lips together, hard, blinking fast. And then he crossed the last 20 feet between us and gripped my arm with both hands like a man making sure something was solid before he put his weight on it. "You look terrible," he said. His voice was rough. "You look better," I said. "You've been wearing my clothes for 2 weeks. Your cardigan is in Greenwich. We're even." He laughed, small, unsteady, but real. The laugh of a man relearning how to use a muscle that had been kept still too long. Dr. Porter's office felt different with Ethan actually in it. She had seen me twice in that chair, had built her documentation around the careful performance of a man impersonating his brother. Now she sat across from the original, and I watched her note the differences that I had worked so hard to erase. The way Ethan held his shoulders slightly lower. The way he looked at the window when he was thinking rather than at the floor. 30 years of treating patients had given her a vocabulary for what she was seeing that went beyond the clinical. She asked him about the past 14 months, with the quiet, unhurried manner of someone who understood that this particular accounting would take time and deserved it. Ethan told her. Not everything at once, it came in pieces. Some of them offered directly, and some pulled gently from the places he had pushed them. The boxes in the garage, the locked door, Olivia's voice at 5 in the morning, flat and administrative, assigning the day's work before he had fully woken up. The meals eaten standing at the kitchen counter while she sat at the table. The phone calls he had wanted to make and hadn't, and the specific way that wanting and not doing had compounded over 14 months into something that felt, by the end, like it was simply the shape of his life. Halfway through, his voice gave out entirely. He pressed his fist against his mouth, shoulders shaking, and Dr. Porter sat forward and said quietly, but with complete conviction, "What happened to you has a name. It is elder psychological abuse and physical neglect. And it is not in any way, under any interpretation, something you caused or deserved." Ethan pulled in a long, shuddering breath. When he lowered his hand, his eyes were wet and his chin was unsteady. But something in his face had shifted some weight, redistributed some burden, acknowledged out loud for the first time by someone with the authority to name it. "I kept thinking," he said, "that I must have done something, that I gave him too much too early, and this was—" He stopped, swallowed. "That this was the bill coming due. Love is not a financial instrument," Dr. Porter said. "It doesn't accrue debt. What Marcus did with what you gave him is his accounting, not yours." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once slowly, like a man accepting something he had needed someone else to say first. Outside in the parking structure afterward, we sat in the rental car without driving anywhere for a few minutes. "I want to be there Thursday," Ethan said. "Ethan, he's my son." His voice was steady in a way it had not been 2 weeks ago. Not the steadiness of suppression, but the steadiness of a man who had found the bottom of something and pushed back up from it. "Whatever he did, I need to be the one who looks at him. Not you wearing my face. Me." I looked at my brother, at the cardigan, at the watch I was still wearing on my wrist, his watch shaped to his wrist, not mine. "Okay," I said, "but you stand beside me, not in front." "Deal." He looked out the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking structure. Nathan, thank you, not for the evidence. He paused. For coming. My throat tightened so sharply that I did not trust my voice for a moment. I unfastened the watch from my wrist and held it out to him. Ethan took it, fastened it around his own wrist, held his arm up, and looked at it the way he had looked at it the day our mother gave it to him. Then Waters called. I put her on speaker. Thursday is confirmed, she said. Marcus's lawyer filed the final conservatorship paperwork this morning. Nathan, we move at noon, or we lose the window. Ethan looked at me. His jaw was set and his eyes were clear, and the man sitting beside me was not the man I had found in that hospital bed 2 weeks ago. We'll be ready, I said. Ethan said nothing. He just nodded once and looked back out at the road ahead. That was enough. The hotel conference room smelled like stale coffee, and the particular tension of people who had been working toward the same moment from different directions and had finally arrived at the same table. 7 of us. Waters at the head, legal pad, open pen, moving, Raymond Holt beside her with his accordion folder, hands finely still after weeks of carrying it alone. Dr. Porter across from him, a slim folder of her own clinical precise, every page dated and witnessed. James Okafor at the corner laptop, open reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. Daniel Crawford at the far end, quieter than the others, the specific quiet of a man who had waited 20 months to be useful and was finally there. Ethan beside me, the watch back on his wrist, both hands flat on the table. Waters looked around the room and said, "Let's go through it once, everything, so that tomorrow there are no surprises on our side." She started with the legal framework. Okafor had filed the counter-petition 4 days ago. The conservatorship hearing had been formally stayed pending the elder abuse investigation. Marcus's lawyer did not yet know the stay had been granted. The paperwork would hit his desk at 8 tomorrow morning, 2 hours before the signing was scheduled to begin. "He'll try to proceed anyway," Okafor said. "The signing isn't technically blocked by the stay, it's a separate civil matter. He'll argue the conservatorship and the asset transfers are unrelated." "They're not unrelated," Waters said. "No, but he'll argue it." Okafor looked at Nathan. "Which is why the timing matters. We need Waters in that room before anything is signed." Raymond went next. His voice was steadier than it had been at the coffee shop, the steadiness of a man who had rehearsed this part until it felt like solid ground. The DFPI had issued the emergency cease and desist that morning, freezing all of Marcus's company accounts pending investigation. The order also covered any transfers connected to the company's operating funds, which, as Raymond's documentation showed, included the account Marcus had been using to fund the personal asset transfers. "The house transfer is frozen," Raymond said. "The investment account transfers are frozen. Anything he gets signed tomorrow is unenforceable." He paused. "He doesn't know that yet. He will at 8 a.m., Waters said. Dr. Porter presented her findings efficiently and without softening. 14 months of documented physical neglect, psychological coercion, isolation, and controlled deprivation. Her report named specific dates, specific incidents, specific physiological markers. It was the kind of documentation that left no interpretive room. When she finished, the room was quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something true has been said plainly. Ethan was looking at the table. His jaw was tight and his eyes were bright, but he did not look away, and he did not ask her to stop. He sat with it the way a person sits with something they have earned the right to hear. Daniel Crawford laid out the emails. Olivia's planning documents the conservatorship strategy drafted 18 months before filing the paper trail that placed her at the center of every decision. She built Marcus a persona, he said. Devoted son overwhelmed by a difficult situation doing his best. The paper trail supports that story right up until you read it next to mine. Waters nodded. Which is why both sets matter. She looked around the table. Tomorrow, Century City, noon. I'll be outside the building with 2 deputies and an APS representative. Nathan goes in as scheduled. The moment the paperwork is presented for signature, I come in. She looked at Ethan. You come in after. Ethan looked up. How long after? 30 seconds, long enough for Marcus to understand what's happening, not long enough for him to recover from it. Ethan nodded. His throat moved as he swallowed. Okafor closed his laptop. I want to address the impersonation question directly because Marcus's lawyer will raise it immediately. He looked at Nathan. Under the power of attorney Ethan signed in the hospital, Nathan had legal authority to act on Ethan's behalf in all matters related to his welfare and estate. Every document he accessed was in Ethan's house under Ethan's legal authority. The recorded conversation was obtained under a valid court order. He paused. The impersonation itself is a legal gray area, but nothing Nathan collected is tainted. Everything holds. The room settled. Waters said, "Questions." Nobody spoke. Ethan reached across and put his hand over mine on the table, brief, firm. The grip of a man who had spent 40 years knowing exactly what his brother's hand felt like. Then he pulled back and straightened in his chair. After the others filed out, Ethan and I sat alone in the empty conference room. The coffee cups were abandoned. The legal pads were closed. "Are you scared?" Ethan asked. "No," I said. He looked at me. "Liar," I exhaled. "Maybe a little." "Me too." He looked at the door. "He's going to look at me tomorrow, Nathan. My son is going to look at me across that table, and I don't know what his face is going to do." "I know. I don't know what mine is going to do either." I looked at my brother, the watch on his wrist, the cardigan, the face that was my face carrying everything it had carried for 14 months and was still here, still at the table, still showing up. "Whatever it does," I said, "you won't be doing it alone." His chin went unsteady for just a moment. Then he pressed his lips together, steadied himself, and nodded once. "Tomorrow." Before I tell you what happened in that conference room on the 28th floor, before the door opened and everything changed, comment the word justice below. So I know you made it this far, because what comes next is the moment this whole story has been building toward. A reminder that this story includes fictional elements added for entertainment and educational value. Names, places, and details are coincidental, but the truth at the center of it is something I believe every family needs to hear. Century City at 9:50 in the morning looked exactly like what it was. A cluster of glass towers built to make money feel architectural. The kind of place where important things happened in rooms with views and leather chairs, and the implicit understanding that whoever controlled the paperwork controlled the outcome. Marcus had chosen it. I had led him. I rode the elevator to the 28th floor alone, wearing Ethan's clothes for the last time. The watch was gone, back on Ethan's wrist where it belonged, and in its place I wore nothing. My left wrist felt light in a way that had taken some getting used to over the past 14 days, and now this morning felt exactly right. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows facing west. Marcus was already there, standing with his back to the door looking out at the city. Olivia sat at the table with the posture of a woman who had decided this morning would go a particular way and had dressed accordingly. Marcus's lawyer, a compact man named Gerald Fitch, who had the careful eyes of someone paid to anticipate problems, sat at the far end with a portfolio open in front of him. A notary public waited near the window with a stamp and a professional expression. Marcus turned when I entered. He smiled the performance smile, the one that had gotten less convincing every day for 2 weeks. "Dad, glad you made it." I sat down. Gerald Fitch slid the conservatorship documents across the table without preamble. 41 pages tabbed at the signature lines, a pen placed precisely at the first tab. "Mr. Cole," Fitch said, "if you'll just sign at each of the marked sections, we can have this completed in under 10 minutes. I looked at the documents, at the pen, at my brother's name, printed at the top of the first page as the proposed conservatee, the person to be legally disappeared from his own life while still breathing. I picked up the pen. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I set the pen back down. Then I reached up with my right hand and removed the ring from my left hand, the ring Ethan and I had both worn for 43 years, given to us by our father on the day we turned 21, identical in every detail. I placed it on the table between us. Marcus stared at it. His face did something involuntary, a flinch quickly controlled. "Dad, what?" The door opened. Detective Carol Waters walked in, followed by 2 deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and a woman in a gray suit who introduced herself briefly and clearly as a representative of the California Adult Protective Services. Behind them, James Okafor stepped through the door and positioned himself near the wall. Gerald Fitch was on his feet immediately. "This is a private proceeding. You have no jurisdiction to obs. Mr. Fitch." Waters' voice was level and carried the specific authority of someone who had no interest in being interrupted. "I have a valid elder financial abuse investigation order under California Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 610-10, a court-approved audio surveillance record, and a DFPI emergency cease and desist, covering all financial instruments connected to Cole investment properties, including the asset transfers in those documents. She nodded at the portfolio on the table. This proceeding is over. Marcus turned to me. His face had gone the particular pale of a man watching something he built beginning to fall. Dad, my name, I said, is not Ethan. The room went absolutely still. I stood up. My name is Nathan Cole. I am Ethan Cole's twin brother. I entered this house 14 days ago under a valid power of attorney with your father's full knowledge and consent because your father was too afraid of you to ask for help through any other door. I reached into the inside pocket of Ethan's jacket and placed a folder on the table. Everything in that folder was collected legally. The printed emails, the forged property transfer, the fraudulent notary seal, the recorded conversation in which you explained to what you believed was your confused elderly father exactly how his signature would be used to cover your company's losses. Olivia stood up. Her composure was intact, but her hands flat on the table were pressing down hard enough that I could see the tendons. This is entrapment. He acted under a signed and filed power of attorney. Okafor said from the wall without raising his voice. Every document he accessed was in Ethan Cole's residence under Ethan Cole's legal authority. The recorded conversation was captured under a court order signed by Judge Patricia Holloway of the Los Angeles Superior Court. He looked at Fitch. Gerald, tell your clients to stop talking. Fitch looked at the folder on the table, at Waters, at the deputies. He sat back down and said quietly, Marcus, Olivia, don't say another word. Marcus stood with his mouth slightly open, the words he had prepared for this morning dissolving before he could reach them. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I watched the moment arrive when he understood not just what was happening, but how long it had been happening. How many conversations he had believed were with one person and had actually been with another. How thoroughly and how quietly the ground had been prepared beneath him. You were never him, Marcus said. It was not quite a question. No, I said, I wasn't. The door opened a second time. Ethan walked in. He was wearing his own clothes, the blue cardigan, his own shoes, the watch on his own wrist. He walked with the careful steadiness of a man who had practiced this moment in his head enough times that the physical version felt like a memory of something that had already happened. He looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at his father, his actual father, standing in the doorway of a room he had chosen for the precise purpose of erasing him. And something happened to his face that I did not have a word for. Not guilt alone, not fear alone. Something that lives underneath both of those in the place where a person still knows, despite everything who they are supposed to be to someone else. Dad. His voice broke on the word. Just that one syllable carrying the weight of everything that word had meant and everything it had been used to do. His eyes filled, and he pressed the back of his hand against his mouth and his shoulders shook once hard. Ethan walked to the table. He stood across from his son. He did not reach for him. He did not look away. I know, Ethan said, quiet, absolute. I know Marcus. That was all. Waters moved forward. The proceeding, such as it was over. What happened next took 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall above the whiteboard, the kind of plain institutional clock that exists in conference rooms, specifically because someone decided the people inside needed to know exactly how much time was passing. Waters read Marcus his rights in the same level, unhurried voice she used for everything. Marcus stood with his hands at his sides and his face very still, the way faces go still when the brain has stopped processing fast enough to generate expression. Gerald Fitch put one hand on his client's arm and said quietly, "Don't respond to anything." Marcus did not respond to anything. He simply stood there while the words landed on him one by one, and his eyes stayed fixed on a point somewhere above Waters' left shoulder that I do not think contained anything at all. Olivia sat down. I watched her do it, the careful, deliberate lowering into the chair, the way she set both hands on the table, with her fingers spread, the breath she took that was slightly too controlled to be unconscious. She was thinking. In the middle of everything falling apart, Olivia Reyes Cole was calculating. Her lawyer arrived 12 minutes later, a woman named Sandra Pierce, who had clearly been on standby, which told me Olivia had prepared for this possibility in a way that Marcus had not. Sandra Pierce whispered to her client for 90 seconds. Olivia nodded twice very slightly, and then Sandra Pierce looked at Waters and said, "My client would like to discuss cooperation." Marcus turned his head. He looked at Olivia with an expression I had not seen on his face before. Not anger, not betrayal exactly, but the expression of a man who has just understood all at once the complete shape of something he had only seen in pieces. His mouth opened, closed. "Olivia." His voice came out wrong, too thin-stripped of all the careful warmth he had practiced. "What are you doing?" Olivia did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Sandra Pierce and said nothing. The financial decisions were made collaboratively. Marcus said, his voice rising slightly, now the controlled surface cracking in real time. "You were there for every one of them. You drafted the conservatorship timeline. You found Calloway. You told me to terminate Raymond." His voice broke on the last word, not with grief, but with the specific fracture of a man realizing he is holding evidence against himself, while trying to use it against someone else. "Olivia, you were there." Olivia looked at him then, just briefly. Her expression was composed and sorrowful, and entirely constructed, and she held it for exactly long enough to be read as regret before she looked away again. It was, I thought, the most honest thing she had done in 2 years. Not the words she had not said any words yet, but that look. The look that said, "Yes, I was there. And I built it so that being there would cost me less than it costs you." I had seen that look before. In 30 years of federal investigations, I had seen it on the faces of architects who had made certain the builders held the permits. Gerald Fitch was speaking quietly to Marcus. The word he kept using was counsel. Marcus needed to stop talking. Marcus needed to wait for his own counsel. Marcus needed to understand that cooperation discussions between co-defendants were a conflict of interest that his own lawyer could not navigate for him. Marcus stopped talking. He sat down, and then he looked at Ethan. Ethan was standing near the window, not seated at the table, not positioned among the lawyers and the deputies, but standing slightly apart from all of it, the way a person stands when they are present but not participating when they are witnessing, rather than acting. He had not moved since he walked in. He had not spoken since those 2 words. Marcus looked at his father for a long time. The tears that had come when Ethan first walked in had dried on his face, leaving the specific tightness that tear salt leaves on skin. His jaw was working. His hands flat on the table were trembling. "Dad," he said. He stopped, started again. "I told myself it was to protect you. I know that." His voice gave out completely. He pressed his fist hard against his sternum, and his shoulders shook, and for a moment he looked exactly like the 12-year-old boy who had fallen through a porch step at Lake Tahoe and cried even though nothing was broken. I know it doesn't." Ethan crossed the room. He did not move fast. He walked with the careful steadiness that had characterized everything he had done today, and he stopped in front of his son's chair, and he stood there while Marcus looked up at him with a face that had run out of places to hide. Ethan put his hand on top of Marcus's head briefly, gently, the way a father touches a child who has done something that cannot be undone and is too young to understand, yet how long they will carry it. One moment, then he took his hand away. "I need time," Ethan said. "That's all I can tell you right now. I need time." Marcus nodded. His chin was shaking so badly he had to press his lips together to control it. A sound came out of him that he swallowed immediately, low and broken and private, the sound of a man collapsing inward where no one could fully see it. Ethan stepped back. He came to stand beside me. His eyes were wet, but his shoulders were straight, and he looked at me with the expression of a man who has done the hardest thing in the room and is still standing. Waters caught my eye. She tilted her head toward the door. We walked out together, Nathan and Ethan Cole, the same face, the same blood, the same 43 years of history, into the corridor of the 28th floor, into the ordinary fluorescent light of a building that had no idea what had just happened inside it. Ethan exhaled, long and slow and complete. "Okay," he said, not to me, to himself. "Okay." Outside the windows at the end of the corridor, Los Angeles spread west all the way to the Pacific, glittering and indifferent and entirely itself. Somewhere in that city, 12 families whose retirement savings had been used as accounting instruments were going to receive phone calls in the next few days that would change what they understood about their financial lives. Raymond Holt was going to sleep tonight without the accordion folder on his nightstand. Margaret Collins was going to look at the house next door and know that what she had seen had mattered. And Ethan Cole was going to go home. "Nathan," Ethan said. "Yeah." "Buy me lunch." I laughed. The sound of it surprised me, full and unguarded. The laugh of a man whose body had decided the worst was over, before his mind had fully confirmed it. "Yeah," I said. "Okay." We took the elevator down. Consequences, in my experience, are never the dramatic thing. The dramatic thing is the moment, the ring on the table, the door opening, the two words spoken across a conference room by a man who had earned the right to say them. The consequences come after quieter and more thorough in the language of court filings and institutional letters and phone calls that people take in private rooms. Marcus was charged under California Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 15610-30. Elder financial abuse, a felony along with forgery under Penal Code 470, and wire fraud under Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. FO 343. His lawyer negotiated for months. The negotiations did not go well for Marcus because Raymond Holt's documentation was comprehensive. Daniel Crawford's emails were irrefutable, and the recorded conversation in the living room, captured under a valid court order on a Saturday evening over 2 fingers of whiskey that Marcus had not offered to share, left very little room for alternative interpretation. Olivia cooperated. Her cooperation reduced her exposure but did not eliminate it. She was charged with conspiracy and elder abuse. Sandra Pierce was good at her job, and the sentence reflected that, but Olivia Reyes Cole would not be practicing law in California or anywhere else for the foreseeable future. The bar she had twice failed to pass had in the end made the decision for her. The conservatorship petition was formally dismissed by the Los Angeles Superior Court. The property transfer document signed with Ethan's forged name on the day he lay unconscious in a hospital bed was voided. The DFPI investigation into Cole Investment Properties resulted in the firm's dissolution and a restitution process for the 12 affected investors. Raymond Holt was formally recognized as a protected whistleblower. His accountant's license remained intact. He sent Ethan a card. Ethan went home to Pasadena in April. He called Frank Delgado from his own phone, standing in his own kitchen, looking out at the garden through the window above the sink on the same afternoon he landed. Frank talked for an hour. Ethan mostly listened. He told me later that it had felt like finding a room he thought had been locked, and discovering the door had always opened from the inside. He planted new roses along the south fence in May. I drove out to Pasadena in June, and then again in August, and by the second visit, the house felt like itself again. The photographs were back on the hallway wall. The side table had returned to its original position, with its bowl of odds and ends, and the porch light that had been broken since sometime in the previous winter had been fixed by a handyman Ethan had hired from a referral Margaret Collins gave him over the fence one Saturday morning. Margaret came for dinner twice. Frank came once with his wife, and they stayed until nearly midnight talking about nothing important, which is to say everything that matters. On the second August visit, Ethan and I sat in the backyard on a pair of old wooden chairs that had been there since he bought the house, drinking coffee in the early evening, while the light went gold and then amber over the San Gabriel Mountains. "Marcus called," Ethan said. I looked at him. He was watching the mountains, both hands around his mug, the watch on his wrist, catching the last of the light. "From the facility," he continued. "He said he was sorry." A pause. "He cried. I could hear it." "What did you say?" "I said I needed more time." He turned the mug in his hands. "I've said it 3 times now. Each time I mean it a little differently." "How do you mean it this time?" Ethan thought about that for a long moment. The evening was quiet around us, a dog barking 2 streets over a sprinkler starting up somewhere, the ordinary sounds of a neighborhood going about its life. "The first time I meant I can't talk to you yet. The second time I meant I don't know what I feel yet." He paused. "This time I think I meant I'm not ready to decide what comes next. But I'm not closing the door." I looked at my brother, at the man who had spent 14 months being made smaller by the person he had given everything to, and who had come out the other side of it, still able to leave a door open. "That's more than he deserves," I said. "Probably," Ethan said, "but it's what I have." We sat with that for a while. The mountains went from amber to the particular shade of purple that California evenings do when the light is leaving and the air has cooled enough to feel like permission to exhale. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Yes." "When you were in there wearing my clothes, sleeping in my room, doing everything they told you to do," he turned to look at me. "What was the hardest part?" I thought about it. About the boxes in the garage and the cold toast on the kitchen counter, and the sound of the lock clicking on the outside of a door that had never needed a lock before. About the notebook, about day 51, and the sentence that had lived in my chest since the moment I read it, "Maybe I deserve this." "Is the hardest part?" I said, was understanding how someone gets to that sentence, how 14 months of small things, each one survivable on its own, adds up to a man who thinks the way his life has become is the way his life deserves to be. I looked at the mountains. That's the part that kept me angry enough to keep going. Ethan nodded slowly. He counted on that, he said, the smallness of it, each thing being just barely survivable. He set his mug down on the arm of the chair. I kept waiting for the big moment, the thing I could point to and say there. That's when it became wrong, but there wasn't one. It was just Tuesday after Tuesday after Tuesday until I forgot what Mondays used to feel like. I had nothing to add to that. It was the most precise description of what I had witnessed from the inside that I had ever heard. After a while, Ethan picked his mug back up and said, "Giants are playing the Dodgers on Saturday. Frank got tickets." "How many fours?" "4." He looked at me sideways. "You're the fourth." I had not been to a baseball game in 16 years. I had forgotten until that moment that I had ever liked going. "Okay," I said. He smiled. Not the careful, diminished smile of the man in the hospital bed, the real one, the one that went all the way to the corners of his eyes and stayed there. The strongest people I have met in 30 years of chasing the truth were not the ones who were never broken. They were the ones who let someone sit beside them in the wreckage long enough to remember what they were before it. Ethan had done that. He had let me in when he had every reason to believe that letting people in was exactly how this had happened. That took more courage than anything I had done. The light left the mountains. The backyard went quiet and cool. Somewhere down the street, the sprinkler shut off. We finished our coffee. That was enough. I am not a man who talks about himself easily, but this family story changed something in me that 30 years of federal investigations never touched. I almost missed it. I almost let distance become the excuse I needed while my brother disappeared one Tuesday at a time. Don't be me. Don't wait for the phone call that comes at 5:47 in the morning. If someone you love is going quiet, making excuses for the people around them, that silence is not nothing. That silence is a notebook waiting to be found. I believe this with everything I have. God did not make us to be managed into smallness. We were made to take up the space we were given fully without apology. Family betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it is a locked door with the handle on the wrong side. Sometimes it is the word dad spoken with perfect warmth by someone counting what you are worth. This is a family story about what love costs when it is used against you and what it recovers when someone finally shows up. If this story reached you, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. Thank you for staying until the very end. Stories ahead contain fictional elements built for the purpose of exploring truths that matter. If this content is not right for you, step away, choose what fits, and take care of yourself. That is always the right choice.